was able to go out and be here for 100 plus days, I guess, really, because my wife stayed at home and really helped kept the family together, and part of that story was true, which was, I'm going off and she's really supporting me, and almost kicked me out of the house just to say go off and try this crazy dream. I said the crazy dream was really to try to start a business, which it was. I just didn't say I'd done it a couple times before. It was the only difference in that.
I mean, I've known him, obviously. We've been married 16 years, 17 together. And as long as I've known Glenn, he's always had this, people have said to him, oh, you just got lucky. You're just lucky. You're just, you're smart. You know how to do business. Not everybody could do that. But I feel like there's something in him that he always knew he could do it again. It wasn't just blind luck that created success. He always said, I know I could do it again. And we had done a show years ago. It's kind of the past. We had appeared together on a TBS show called The Real Gilligan's Island. And I don't know if any of you remember Gilligan's Island. It was a sitcom in the 60s. But Sherwood Shorts, who created Gilligan's Island, and Mike Fleiss, who created The Bachelor, teamed up to create a game show based on that sitcom. So we appeared as the Howells, or the Stearns, as you were. And he ended up winning, surprise, surprise, and donated all the money to charity. And then I came in second. Couldn't let him win. It would have been miserable at home had I won. But anyway, so then from there, he had a lot of people approaching him saying, that was such great fun television, and, you have something to say, and, what kind of shows could we create? And, he wasn't really interested in exploiting himself or business in the way that they all suggested on a regular basis. And he's like, you know what? If you do a show where you just drop me off in the middle of wherever, in a town I don't know, I'll start again, I could do this again, I could create this. And he just has always had this story going on for probably 15, 16 years. I've heard this. And then when Discovery came along and they teamed up, and all of a sudden it happened. They were like, put your money where your mouth is. And here we were. And neither one of us had ever been to Erie before, so it was kind of exciting to jump into this place and just start from scratch. And if you want to talk about the getting here, because I think you were as shocked as anyone as to where you had landed and how you were going to do it, because it was not as easy as you thought it would be.
True, but it was funny because I said, as I sat with Discovery, I said, anyone can really start a business, and if you follow some basic principles, you really can do it. I bet you I could do this, give me $5,000, anyone can get a credit card and do it in maybe 6 months. And they said, well, how about 3 months and $100? That wasn't my idea. That was their idea. And I said, well, do you want me to live under a bridge? Watch, guy with some wealth live under a bridge, or do you want to see me build a business? And they're like, we want to see you do both, So I didn't live under a bridge. I just lived in a truck. Thank you, Chris, for the blue truck. But
Betsy.
Betsy. But yeah, so it was, really, again, having some success in the past with business, and realizing, I went to university. I was the only, the first person in my family to do that.
And you had a really good grade point average.
I did. I got a 2.1 grade point average for all you in the house that are still going. But so,
you actually graduated, which is
that was my goal, was to graduate. And it was about really, what I learned in college was really about I learned how to pay for college. I learned how to deal with people. I learned when, we were going to get kicked out of the apartment, I had to be the one to negotiate and to stay. Little things that, became pretty important tools in my life. I wasn't, again, I wasn't someone that was going to be an engineer, but I knew I could put people together and do some things that could work. And so when that happened, and over 30 years, and when Discovery said, can you do it in 3 months instead of 6 months or a year, I thought, can I take everything that I've learned and just boil it all down into 90 days? And to be honest, I didn't know if I could, and so halfway through the show, realizing that this wasn't going to be a failure, that I get to just go home and say I didn't do so well. This is the whole world watching, right? And And I think that's important because I think whenever we take on a job, whenever we take on, you know, a task, and you get into that place where you realize this is a lot harder than I thought, we always start looking, out the window thinking, well, that looks a little easier, and the shiny objects. And and I've always found that when I didn't go after the shiny objects, when I stayed the course, it would work somehow. I mean, maybe it would be different than I thought, but I was proud of pulling through the hard times. And in this case, I couldn't pull out. I've got the whole world watching, and I got to that place where I thought, I don't know how I'm going to get myself out of this one. And and then, I just would sit there for a second and realize I'm going to rely on people like these guys up front, right? RJ, Mike, Matt, Chris, Dawn, and say you can't. No one can is an island. We can't do it on our own. We've got to find great people, and we got to surround ourselves, and we got to tell them that we believe in them, and then hopefully that energy keeps growing, and then you can take on and do things that are almost impossible. I mean, we were at the restaurant last night. There was a wait. There was, and it was full of mostly local people. So it wasn't just, we've come 3 or 4 times before, and it's been a lot of people from around the country that have come because of the show. And so now it's legit, right? It's real. People are liking the food, and they're doing a great job. And so, um, it's just life is, really, I think about the grit and not giving up on things. And so I was really pleased to see that, you know, um, other people, believe in a dream, and then they also bear down and don't give up, and it works. And so I'm really proud of the restaurant. I'm proud of Erie. I'm proud of what it represents because a portion of the profits goes back full circle to here, where we've got guys here that are part of the entrepreneurial fund that are going to give back to entrepreneurs. So it's kind of Erie feeds the restaurant goes back and feeds the local entrepreneurs, and it cycles. So I'm real proud of that.
So, you know what? I don't know if a lot of you know about his Glen's beginning as to how he got where he is before. I know Matt and Chris here kind of discovered who he was before the show wrapped, but the story Glen has told is, he started out with pretty humble beginnings, and we're a member of an organization called the Horatio Alger Association, which celebrates American achievers who have come from extreme adversity. And so many of us have a story. And when you look at Glen's story, I mean, he was raised in the suburbs of D.C. He had very little, and kind of an area where there were drive-by shootings and a lot of gang activity. And in fourth grade, he was held back, and that was kind of a blow. At a fourth grade, you're kind of self-aware, and that kind of was
I know
another.
you're dumb when you're held back in fourth grade.
And then a
Don't
few.
do that to your kids. Do it in kindergarten, please. First grade.
And then, a few years later, he discovered how a body works and got a girl pregnant at 14. So, probably discovered earlier, but that's about time. So he, all of a sudden is a dad at the ripe age of 14 and 15 and dealing with trying to lie about a worker's permit to make money to support a child because he had to buck up and make some real hard changes in his life. He had great support around him and his family, but there was alcoholism in his family. His father had a drug and alcohol problem, and his mom drank. The whole family drank. So he was surrounded by a lot of things that could create the excuse to say, well, I'm a victim. My life sucks. These things, this is why I'm not successful. This is why I'm not going to make it. And he dug into something within him that says, I'm not going to allow that to define my future. And if you want to talk a little bit about that rise and how you got through that, because a lot of these principles that you adopted in the show really were instilled when you were very young.
Right. And I mean, that's why we're big fans of this group called Horatio Alger because it's about kids of adversity that have come through some traumatic situations, and they choose to be the victor instead of the victim, right? And so I think, any of us that have gone through some tough times when you were younger, um, if you look at it in a way where you go, wow, I got through that, and you use that as opportunity to grow instead of, you know, poor me, then you're ahead of the game, right? You went through a bunch of crap that, you probably never wish on anyone, yet you're able to then see how resilient you are. And so, luckily, I was personally able to take that. Wow, I mean, at 20, I already have a 6-year old, right? And I'm in college. I'm not doing that well, but hey, I've gotten through all this stuff, and you begin to realize that, you can do things that you never dreamt of doing. And so, luckily, that led into my life. I was after graduating college, I went out to California with a friend. We drove out, and I ended up found myself on a bench by myself, staring over the Pacific Ocean, and just looking at these beautiful houses and the cars and the people. And I'm like, this is the life I want. Like this is it. And again, coming from very humble beginnings, and I thought, wonder how I could get one of these houses. How can I make it? And so there was a man in his yard, and he was doing the, gardening and everything. And I thought, I'm going to ask this man. So I walked up to him. I said, what did it take to get this house? Like I know I can do it. What did it take? And the guy's like, Senor, I'm the gardener. He says, I think the man's in real estate. And so I thought, I'm going to get into real estate, and so sometimes being naive works, okay? So, and not having all the answers is okay. But when we ask, we're not afraid to put ourselves out there and not be the expert. It's okay. It actually works, I think, to our advantage.
I think
So,
that's also one of the principles that I've noticed living with Glenn. He asks when, sometimes we have a tendency to make up our minds for other people in so many aspects in business and life and relationships. If you don't ask, you don't get. And I think, and you don't say no for the other person, which I found he always is reminding me, well, you haven't asked, so how can you say no? How can you make up the mind for the other person? And I think what you've always done is you've not been afraid to ask hard questions and put yourself out there. And never use an excuse. And I think there's so many examples like in this show. I mean, he pushed a lot of these guys probably past their breaking point at times, asking and asking and asking. So talk a little bit about that resilience and what you do.
well, I will tell you that I wouldn't have ever had a mortgage business. I wouldn't have ever had the success without a lady named Jeannie Baker. And Jeannie Baker was the receptionist at HUD. And, and so you never know where you're going to find the people that are going to really help you. But I would go to the receptionist, say, how can I be a mortgage banker? How can I get a HUD contract? And she was just the receptionist. I didn't know, but I thought she might be able to help. And that lady got me all the paperwork to become a mortgage banker. And HUD has nothing to do with mortgage banking. Then she went and called me and said, there's a HUD contract coming out. You should bid on it. I became the largest HUD contractor in the country doing audits for HUD. And then I became the largest for settlement services, being a title agent across the entire country. But it was all started with a receptionist because it doesn't matter. I mean, everybody contributes in a business, and nobody, you don't know who is going to be able to help you. So ask away, And I've been very lucky to have found lots of, you know, gold, so to speak, in the people that just are there working every day. You don't have to get to the top person. You just have to keep finding and asking and going to places where you've never been. I mean, I had never had a HUD contract before, didn't know what one was. I remember she told me about it, and I bid on it. I just bid $1 less than the other guy who had it before me. I didn't do much research. I found out, I bid $149 to do a title work on every deal, and they cost me $300. So I was going, all right, I'm negative $151 on every deal.
But you got the contract.
So I went back to HUD and I said I made a mistake. I've bid too low. And they said, well, you don't understand how contracting works. You've bid on it. You own it. If you want to give it back, it's fine. You'll never do a contract again. We wipe you out. And not to bore you with the long story, but I found that every deal I did had like $5,000 of attorney's fees tied to foreclosure work and all kinds of stuff. Yet the government was taking it back and they were doing everything and they were guaranteeing. So I said, why do you pay all this money? I said, if I can negotiate the 5,000 down, say to half, I'll save the government 2,500. Will you give me an extra $300 so I can make some money on the contract? I think it's fair. And they said, if you can do that, then we'll give you the 300. So they wrote in the 300 extra on each deal. I wrote a letter to every lawyer saying HUD will not pay any more fees. I didn't have to do anything else. I saved them $5,000 on every deal. The government made money, and I ended up doing pretty good myself. So, sometimes, again, we find ourselves in not so good situations, but how do we figure our way out of it, And that was
Got
one.
scrappy. I think getting scrappy is a big deal. I think you've been really good at getting scrappy. You know what? I think it's important. A lot of people from the show, a lot of people have said, you hear at the opening of the show, is the American dream alive? Is it still exist? And I think a lot of us have been told it's not. It's not. Things are changing. The economic structure of the United States is changing. The opportunities aren't out there. But I think what you did here is kind of prove that it does still exist. What's your take?
Well, I mean, there was no better place than Erie, right? I mean, I came here, and again, I had told Discovery the places I really hadn't spent much time, which was up around this area, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and so when I found myself here, and I remember driving down 12th Street and seeing all the buildings, and you could just see the old days with industrial, strength and everything that was going on here, and then it looked like it was all gone. It looked like it had been just left behind. And as I got to know Erie better, every one of those buildings are full, and it's full of small businesses, full of people that are out there. Mayor, thank you for doing all that you do to help, make these small businesses thrive. Because then all of a sudden I see Hannah over at Ember and Forge, and I meet all these people that are out there saying, I gave up my job, corporate job, to try to do something in a small business and try to make it better. And so you start seeing the community. I'm going, wow, I'm so lucky to have found Erie, or they put me here because this community is doing so well because you're encouraging small business to really thrive here, and there's a lot of cities that don't look that way, and but you want to do that. And so all I found in Erie was proud, hardworking people that support local. We talk, or the term hyper local, I found, which I'd never heard, but really meant, you guys are all supporting the local people. You're not supporting as many of the big box stores or, chain stores. And because you want to see your community thrive. And so I was like, wow, how cool is that? And what a wonderful place to be when everybody helps each other. That's why I was never afraid to mention Federal Hill Barbecue. I think they're great. That's why I thought that we can gather all the Erie Ale Trail beers and we can all put them together and we can support them and other businesses. And let's go talk about the guys with the chicken wings down the street. No one's going to eat barbecue every day, right? I mean, why don't we support each other? And then, you'll come over and you'll support us, and then you'll go support the other guys. So it's about embracing the whole community and trying to make sure that everybody um, realizes that that's the way you win, is when you support each other. And so you were already doing it. So I walked into a pretty easy setup, it felt like.
I don't think you've ever been afraid to embrace the competition. I think that's something that I think a lot of people are afraid of in business, in life. I mean, just for example, at home, I mean, we traveled for a whole year with his ex-wife. I mean, if I was going to embrace something, that was a very big deal. I mean, she's a great woman and we have an incredible relationship. And, we asked her to be the godmother to our children. And that's kind of the tone that Glen sets. And I think you can set the tone of your own life. And if you put that out there, that you're not afraid to bring someone in that maybe knows more than you or is doing better than you, I mean, it's all ships rise. I mean, I think it's something that has been probably the backbone to your success.
Well, I learned a lot of that actually from her because you're right. I mean, we went around the world. I'd gotten cancer 5 years ago, and And that's when I thought, I don't know that I want to just focus on business. I'm going to focus on my family. And so I sold majority of my business, bought a boat, and we went around the world with it. And we needed a teacher. So who better? My ex-wife was a teacher, and so she came and I mean, it was a fairly large boat. I mean, it had 16
They
crew
saw
on
it.
it. Oh yeah, that's right. And so we took her, and but that was a very welcoming. It takes a village, so to speak. And again, I go back to Erie. Everybody's supporting each other. She was doing that, you know, personally, and so it worked out. I mean, I'm telling you, a whole year I never fought with the two of them except for one night when they both tried to tell me how to parent, and I walked out. But other than that, it was pretty good.
He was wrong. We were right, but we knew better. You touched on a little
Yes,
bit the
dear.
cancer. The show didn't really highlight at all his struggles with cancer, and I think during a lot of the interviews he would talk about it. But about 5 years ago, Glenn was diagnosed with a squamous cell tongue cancer and dealt with that. Went through chemo and radiation, and it's about then when I think you were mostly inspired to, and that's why his you can probably hear his throat is a little strained, but he had that for he got through that chemo and radiation, came out on the other side and said, life is short. I want to enjoy my family, and we did that trip around the world. And then, lo and behold, 4 years later, we got another cancer diagnosis, and that was the show. Actually, was supposed to shoot over last year, a year ago, spring. And suddenly he has to have a surgery, and they removed his epiglottis. Now, if any of you know about oral anatomy, your epiglottis is the primary defense against choking. It's what allows you to swallow and then talk. It closes your airway and you can talk as soon as you have a bite. Well, he can't do that anymore, and it's been removed. So now he is primarily on a feeding tube, which in other words, he gets all of his nutrition from shakes. And we joke because he jokes about everything, and life is great because you have a good sense of humor. But he's never eaten better than he's been eating now.
I'm a
With
damn vegan now. I don't even want to be a vegan.
but that challenge a year ago when we were in the hospital and he was struggling just to get soup down, we had Tim Warren, who was the showrunner, filming and helped create the show with him, filmed everything, the surgery, the doctors, all the nitty gritty. And we really thought that might have been a big part of the show, but they left it out completely. And even at the end of the show, when he was talking to the team about living without excuses and how these guys really were a core group of people that didn't use excuses for stopping them from having the greatest experience they could. Glenn revealed the feeding tube in the restaurant and showed them, you may never have seen me eat. And there was a few shots in the show where he chewed the barbecue and he chewed the noodles, but he immediately spit it out because he could not swallow. And the reason he was in the ER in the first episode, which a lot of people questioned, was because he suffered some aspiration pneumonia and was actually in for 4 days, not just an in and out. But they didn't want to make that part of the story because there
But
was
I'm
so
glad
much
they
more.
didn't. I really am, because it was about the American dream. It was about trying to see if you can make it. Anybody could, and I didn't want it to be like poor me. It wasn't about any of those things. It was about, can anybody do it? And sure, it was a little harder even than what they showed, but it worked out where that wasn't a focus, and it's okay that it wasn't a focus. It was.
But that's one of the things I admire most about you is you don't, this guy has the strongest mind of any person I think I've ever encountered. And it's a lot of the reason you live the way you do, and you live hard, you love hard, you have never made any excuses about how you live. And this cancer, although it's been frustrating, he doesn't have it anymore. He's clear, he's clean, which is a good news. But he's adapted, and he talks about embracing change. And this is something that he had to adapt to and not let it define him and set him back. And so many times we get hit in life with things that just upset everything, and then we let that be our crutch for why we're not doing what we say we want to do. But he's never let those types of setbacks get in the way. I think you're very strong with that, and
Well,
it's been hard.
I mean, yeah, it's been hard, but it's been. when I look at it, I've never been prouder of coming here and doing what we did. I mean, it was, the other day we were laying in bed and my daughter was reading comments from LinkedIn or
Instagram.
somewhere Instagram, and I haven't been that good at getting back to most of it. It's just been overwhelmed. But I'm actually starting my mortgage business back up, and so she's reading, and she says to my wife, she's like, "Wow, mom, every comment they say they're inspired and they say really positive things." She's like, "I haven't heard one hater yet." And there's always a hater, and she's like, "There's been no haters." And I turned to Mindy and I said, "That's why I did this. I really wanted my kids proud and I wanted people to be proud." And then the byproduct has been wonderful to have lots of young people that um, really say, "Wow, I can start a business. I can go out and do this on my own." And maybe it took a little, maybe the show helped you push you to another level to where you're going to start something or you're going to try something. And I just read to Maggie, my son today sent me an email. He has a meeting with the SBDC in Denver because he's starting a car flipping business. He just watched the show the other day. I'm going, "Didn't you watch it 2 months ago?" He didn't. So my own son.
You're nobody to them,
No,
but dad, just dad.
that's it.
Took him a while. I think that I am so proud. I don't know if of this man and how he's raised children too, because a lot of what we see in the world is an entitlement attitude about I don't you see it among peers and kids and college graduates and stuff, that I am owed something in this world. I am owed when I get out. I am owed, but the really when you earn your own way and you've worked hard and you accept the fruits of that labor, it's an incredibly rewarding experience. And we've shown our kids that. I mean, he's made our kids mow lawns, and that we never gave money to our children, his teenage boys who are now 20s. They never got allowance. They had to earn it. They got earnings. And we bought a lawnmower, and he made his oldest son pay for his own trip back east. And
Well, we were the only one in our neighborhood who had a lawnmower, and and we would,
everyone else
but
got equipment.
literally we would, have them. My son said he wanted to go to a trip back east, and it cost $2,500. And I said, "Wonderful." I said, "I'm even. This is in eighth grade. I said, I'm even willing to pay for half of it, but you got to get a job. And so he got a job and he cut grass, earned $50 because that's what I had paid um, the gardener. And a little side story on that. The first day he cut the grass, he says, "I'm finished, Dad." And I said, "Stay right there." And I ran home from work and I checked the grass. I said, "You missed a spot. You missed a spot." He thought I was such an SOB, right? And I said, "If you're going to do a job, you do it right." I said, "Next time, $10 comes off. Next time, $20 comes off." So the next 4 days later, California, 4 days, the grass goes fast. He, I go check it again and shake his hand, said, "Great job." The end of the year, he's got 500 extra dollars. And the deal was you have to keep $100 in your account. And he has all this money, so he goes and buys a PlayStation, and it's for $500. But he didn't remember the tax, right? So he's got to pay the tax. So now he's 40 something dollars short. He's got enough, but he's 40 something. And so he says, "Dad, I've got all the money, but I only have $55, and I know I'm supposed to have 100 left over." I said, "Well, then you can't go." I said, "A deal's a deal. We made a deal. And that's the way it works. I'm sorry." And he says, "But I still have tonight. I can still cut the grass." And I said, "Well, then cut the grass." So he cuts the grass. He comes halfway through, and he comes in long faced. She was there with my daughter, and he says, "It's dark, and I can't finish the grass." I said, "Well, then you can't go." I said, "We made a deal. I'm sorry." And he just left, just long faced, walked downstairs, and I mean, a deal's a deal. That's the way it is. And so I walked downstairs,
Your
went
dad.
out in the thing, grabbed a flashlight. People in my neighborhood must have thought we were nuts, but I walked with him with a flashlight as he cut the rest of that grass for another 45 minutes. And he got his $50, had 100 left over. He went and went on the trip. And when he wrote a essay that summer to get into some other school or whatever, what are you most proud of? He said he's most proud that he paid his way to that trip, right? So I don't think we hand people things. I don't think it's a good idea. There's a lot of people that I heard little whispers of because I really didn't pay much attention to the outside people, but said you should have given these guys more or what? I'm like I did. I wasn't giving people money. That wasn't what I came here for. It was they earned what they got. And so that wasn't the goal. And if people didn't like it, I'm sorry because I don't. I believe you can teach a man to fish much better than just give a man a fish. And so um, and it's worked out. We don't have entitled kids, and I'm very proud of that. And so anyway, but maybe there's
So
some.
far, we have 2 daughters still.
Well, yeah,
They're coming up.
they're coming.
You know what? I
Some
think about the
questions.
show. I know we're going to do some question and answers here in a minute, but yeah, I think a lot, and you touch on what other people are saying, but I know a lot of what happened and a lot of people were asking is, how did you buy a house? I mean, I think that was one of the main questions. I know you wanted to touch
Well,
on that.
it's funny because I told Discovery, I said, how am I going to do this? I've got to buy a house, but I can't give Glenn Bryant a fake name and go off and I'm not committing fraud. And they said they said, well, how do you think you should do it? I said, well, for a $45,000 house, $10,000 down, a person that makes 38,000 a year could qualify for this with a 680 FICO score or better. I mean, we had to. So they said, all right, we'll put that in. That any person making 35,000 or whatever a year with a 650 FICO score or better would qualify for this house because we had to do. But they didn't put it in, and so everyone's going, how did you do it? And I'm like, anyway, that's television for you. So, but it was more about the bigger picture. It wasn't about those little details because some of them you can't do like that. It's impossible. But anybody could do it if you had, if you made that kind of money. So, but they were gonna put it in, they didn't. So
I know Maggie's anxious to jump in and get some Q&A started too, but I know a lot of people have been asking if Discovery's going to do any more with the show, and we've had a call with them actually just yesterday that the show did so well for Discovery, and they want to do part 2, and it will be more along the lines of Glenn possibly coming in and mentoring different businesses to see how they're surviving and what they can do to create their own success. And it's basically taking the principles from the first and applying them to other aspects, and maybe even starting, we'll come back to the underdog and see how things are going there, or Iron Empire. So, there's some exciting businesses that have come out of the show, and then we want to keep those alive and well and keep the messages going. Maggie, did you want to start with some Q&A?
Sure, and I don't have a microphone,
You
so
want
I
mine?
have to use my professor voice. Oh, look, Glen's so nice. Thank you, Glen. So we've talked about this before, and you've mentioned a little bit, but a lot of people are curious if you actually watched the show when it aired, because I didn't see it. None of us saw it before it went on air, correct? Am I speaking for everyone? You didn't either.
no, I never got to see the show.
So when you saw it, what were some of the reactions that you had when you saw what they did with all of that filming and how it turned out?
I didn't get any creative license or the ability to watch it and say I don't like this part. I was surprised by what they had in there and what they didn't have in there. Um, I was overall very happy with the fact that they really did make it a positive show. They showed Erie in a great light, and there are a few things that they could have exploited that didn't go so well or made people not look so well. And we would talk about it amongst ourselves, but still, when it gets back to Discovery, they can always change it. But we'd always say, let's leave that out or whatever, and they did for the most part. Um, there wasn't very many things that came out very negative. You know, um, some, you know, a couple, people under pressure didn't do so well, but that was just pressure, and that's just what it was. But for the most part, I think I was very proud of how the show, looked. A lot of things they could have added in there that I wish they did, but there's only so much time.
So that goes to the next question, which is, did you want it? Oh, if you were to do it again, what would you do different now knowing what the end result was, if anything?
Shoot, I really, I don't think I would do much different. There's a couple people that really worked real hard, like Kelsey in the restaurant that did really well, and they just weren't able to develop the character fast enough. There's only 8 hours, and they shot for so long. I felt bad for her because she worked real hard and didn't get a lot of exposure, but or any really. But no, I mean it's just it was pretty good. I don't think I would change much in it at all.
Are you coming back to Erie for this part two?
I don't. I'm going to do what they want me to do, but I'm coming back no matter what. I've got a restaurant to look after, so you know, coming back anyway.
How do you think what you showed and what was shown has changed the way people see the small business community in smaller cities like Erie? Do you think there's something different?
I hope. I think so. I mean, I've had a lot of people that hundreds of people say I did not know about the Small Business Development Center, um, and didn't realize that there are resources out there where if they, because a lot of people say I don't even know how to start a corporation, or I don't know about payroll, or how you get insurance, and they didn't know that there's resources that'll help you do those kind of things. So, excuse me. So having tools, just knowing there are places to go and have people help hold your hand through those processes, I think has inspired some people to say, and maybe I could do it, because those were always the stoppers for a lot of people. They have great ideas, but how do I become a business? What do I do? So I just hundreds of people have reached out to me like that.
Yes, and I have said to you, you needed nothing from me at all. So you did definitely do a great job.
That's wrong.
Um,
I appreciated all that you did. So no.
Well, I appreciated you coming here for sure. It was great working with you. Thanks, Glenn. So, what advice? We have lots of, these are a lot of my students. I teach here as well. And so, a lot of my students are here, the staff and faculty, and a lot of them are looking at potentially being an entrepreneur themselves, owning their own business. What advice would you give them based on everything you've done?
Well, I mean, I hope the show shows the main piece of advice is your plan never goes the way you plan it, right? No matter what. And when it gets hard, just understand that it's going to get harder, and the difference between the ones that make it and the ones that don't usually are the ones that don't give up, seem to figure out how to make it, and so, I hope if people out there start their business, when they get to that place where they go, it's time for me to give up, that you realize that's the time I'm supposed to bear down and grind through it harder. That's not the time when you give up. It's going to come in any business. You're going to get to that place where you think, this isn't what I thought. I'm not happy right now. You got to get through that, and then you get to the place where you're doing what you probably thought you'd do, or inspired to do, or leads you in a direction where you're going to end up doing something that you're going to love. So,
how about for Mindy? Let's ask her a question. You alluded a little bit to Glenn with this crazy idea of doing it all over again and starting from scratch and showing. What, as it got closer, what did you feel like knowing he's gone for 3 months? And he has to do all of this? What kind of thoughts were going through your head when it actually happened?
I was like, oh, the whole bed to myself. The kids climbed in, and we just had a heyday, and I could online shop and not hide the boxes. No, you know what? The only thing I was honestly worried about was his health, I thought, and that actually proved okay, because the crew really took very good care of him, and the friends and people who were involved in the process. I knew he was crazy enough to do it. I've lived with him for 17 years. I've seen this. He's never afraid of a challenge or something that's going to push him to the level. He can handle more pain than any person I've ever known. Oh, I thought that was interesting. He's part of the show. One of his dearest friends, and it's kind of a funny. We call them twins, much like the Danny DeVito, Arnold Schwarzenegger relationship. John Elway and Glen are really, they've been partners. If you know Elway from the Denver Broncos, but we are partners with him in a project and a ranch, and they have become the best of friends. And John was there on the boat that whole first episode. They were together, and he sat down and had a big talk with him, and John said, you know what, Glenn, I wouldn't do it. I mean, I've had great success, but no way you couldn't get me to give it all up and go do that. I mean, you've got the creature comforts in your life and all these luxuries, and it was hard building it from the start. And he just thought he was crazy to do something and take on something like that. And then he also did a FaceTime with him in the plane with another colleague and friend of ours, is Richard Branson, who you guys might know. And Discovery didn't show any of that, but Richard just said the same thing. He said, "Glenn, you're the craziest one that I know that would do something like that, but I would never. Like I don't need to, I don't want to. Like, and you get to a place in your life where you've had success and you've struggled and you've been through it all, and then a lot of you are just about to face it, and some of us have been through it and are in the middle of it. And this guy is not afraid of taking that on, and I've seen it in 17 years. It's been amazing to watch, and I've always said he can endure more pain than any person I've ever encountered, and that's inspired me in times to just reach in and find my own set of grit, because we don't all have it installed in the same way that Glenn does.
That's for sure. So you decided, as we all know, on a barbecue place with craft beer, but I know a little bit about what you really wanted to do, and that didn't work out. But what made you decide, because it's totally different than anything you've ever done, but you decided this is the business I'm going to start?
Well, a couple things. When the beer business wasn't going to work out, and what I thought with beer, it sounded pretty good because there you got the Erie Ale Trail, you got all these people that have excess capacity. So I thought, why not utilize their infrastructure, and I won't have to pay for it, and I could make beer, but without paying all that money. But again, no one knew I had a 90-day timeline, and I couldn't say that. So, I had to pivot and move. And then again, seeing Federal Hill down the street with the big long line, mentioning the Rib Fest, and it all kind of came together saying, wow, 50,000 people are going to come here that like barbecue, and then we know there's a line, so I know there's a demand for barbecue, and we could highlight beer. People like beer and barbecue, so it just kind of all fit pretty quickly. And yeah, I mean, you got to find the need, right? And there was the need, and we knew it was there. So when, and luckily, because the restaurant thing didn't work out at first, and we had to go to the other building, we ended up having the Rib Fest first, which paid for the money to get into the restaurant, because it was supposed to happen off of that house, which was a disaster. It didn't work out. It's a nice house now, by the way, but it took a little more extra work than we thought. So, but yeah, no, it ended up working out great. So we got into the barbecue business, and it's actually a great business. I mean, there's a lot of people. I went to a place called Mambacue, which is a group of people. It used to be men, but now the women have decided that it's not fair. So it's for the men and the women, I guess, as it should be, across the country. And I went to the Mambacue event and found Mike there, and I never forget, because Mike was in the corner and everyone said he's the best barbecuer. And so I said, Mike, how you doing? I'm Glenn. I'm looking for someone who could help me. And he goes, I could win that Rib Fest. And he did, I mean, I was like, yeah. But I'll never forget when you said that, sitting there and that, yeah, the quiet assassin. That's what I call him. But so it was great.
So you're both extremely successful and extremely busy, but you have a wonderful family, and you speak a lot about that and how that's focused has changed a little bit. How do you balance that, especially now that you have gone back into building the mortgage business back?
I mean, so it depends on your definition of balance, right? I mean, some people think balance means you get up, you do yoga, and then then you work for 2 hours, then you take a half an hour, break, and my balance kind of tends to go. I can't touch my toes, but my balance tends to go kind of in weeks. I will work for weeks and not that much balance, and then I'll play for a week, and then I work. So I get balance, but it's in longer stretches. And I get a lot done, and then I goof off, and I've done that my whole life. So I just have a different definition of balance, I guess. And it's worked. I mean, I'm still married. Um, you know, the first time it didn't work. That's why she's my ex-wife now. No, you're not. I had my first wife and my last wife. And so I don't tend to do it anymore like that. And again, actually, I'm doing this, restarting the mortgage business, which we were the second largest in the country when I'd sold, um, probably because of the show. I was like, you know, why don't I take the 30 years and put it back in and go do it all over again one more time with the mortgage business? And it's been just a wonderful experience so far to gather all the old team back together and start to redo it all again. So fun.
So Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and one of the questions that were sent to us to ask you is, with Thanksgiving upon us, what are you thankful for both of you?
Wow. Well, first, obviously, I mean, what cancer's taught me is just be grateful and thankful for each day. People, uh, was I talking to the doc? Yeah, today. And then also the other day about how do you feel about having your epiglottis removed? I've been in ICU 8 times in the last year and 3 months for 3 to 4 days at each time. Um, Things like that. I'm grateful to be alive, right? I mean, I'm grateful. I don't care about, so I don't have an epiglottis, so I can't do those things. So if you look at what you have versus what you don't have, I think, then, you're going to be a lot better off. And in my case, I've had this wonderful, supportive wife and a family that's really balanced. And when I mean balanced, again, they probably don't do yoga in the morning and do those things, but I mean, their heads are on straight. Um, my son's girlfriend came to our house one time, and she's like, "Wow, like I didn't know if you guys lived in an apartment or you lived in a big house," because my son never talked about that. So they're balanced. They don't take and have a desire to uh, be what they're not. Yeah, I got one son that likes to brag, but other than that, you know, uh, I think more power to him too if he wants to do it. But anyway, but yeah, so I'm grateful for just every day. I don't look back. You asked what would I change? Again, with the show, wouldn't change with my life. Wouldn't change anything either. So just grateful for every day.
Same thing. I don't know that you have time to do this, but people are very interested in what you read.
So I'm reading a book called Chop Wood and Carry Water. You know that book?
I do not, but
Yeah,
I'll have to look it up.
it's a great book, and it's just in a nutshell. I won't give it away, other than this man wants to go out and be a samurai archer, and he gets there, and they say, "Okay, great. First, we're going to learn to chop wood and carry water because we have to heat our water and do these things," and he has to do that for months because the idea of life is you can't go for it all at once. You got to take your time and learn and chop the wood and do the things necessary in order to prepare in life. And so it's a wonderful book. It's got so many great little anecdotes in it about just life, and it's really, really great. Um,
So my question is, when are you going to write your book?
yeah, it's funny because I I was I looked at that maybe a few years ago, and I thought everybody's always said that, Glenn, you should do this book and all stuff. And I thought, if I start believing what they say, then maybe my head gets big, because then everybody probably has a book in them. So why would I do that? So I didn't do it because I thought, that just it feels a little too, I don't know, self-centered kind of. I don't know. But then finally, Mindy's like, you should do it. Um, so the lady comes with us. We're going to be in the Caribbean next week. So we'll see. We'll see if something happens out of it. But
Nice place to write a book, I think.
yeah.
So that's where you'll be for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. It'll be there.
That's awesome. That pretty much is these questions. Anyone have any questions they would like to ask Glenn? Oh, somebody's got to have a question. There we go.
You know, it's funny that you say that because what he was saying is, how do you know if you should pivot or keep banging your head against the wall? Because um, maybe you're you really are in the wrong area, right? And I've also I think it's hard to, because what you're saying is, or what I'm saying, I think is, like I gave up on beer, right? So that means I did give up.
You
But I
had a
said,
timeline too, though.
but
You
I
were
had a
under
timeline,
pressure.
and all I know is that everyone I knew that went for the other, like when I started in college, people were, man, alarms, that's the thing. You're going to get alarms and put them in cars and you're going to be rich. You know, all these little things that go away over time. And I just found them just keep chugging along doing my little thing. And I just did it for years and years and years and years until I became the best at it, right? And that other book, speaking of books,
Malcolm
Malcolm
Gladwell,
Gladwell,
Outliers.
Outliers,
That's another good book.
and the one where it talks about how many
10,000
10,000
hours.
hours is, about putting your time in. Again, chop wood, carry water, right? Same thing. And once you get to be an expert at something, then you can find ways to really, I think, make it, right? And so I don't know if there, if you say there's always a good time to pivot, then you might be telling yourself there's always a good time to give up, right? Which is not the answer. I
But
haven't give.
you've met a lot of people who you said a lot of people get great business ideas. Even your son, he got all excited, he got in the honeymoon phase, and then it got hard, and he wanted to quit. He's like, "This is too hard." But it's the people that say, "This is hard, and yet I see a goal at the other end of that," and the ones that push through that pain when you do feel like you're banging your head are the ones that have the reward because it's the 10,000 hours of putting in the time for doing something you believe in that will eventually pay off because most people give up when it gets hard. That's usually when you see most businesses fail. I'm sure you've seen it too. They get into it excited and it's the honeymoon, I'm starting this business, and then all of a sudden shit gets real.
Well, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, if it's years of doing it and you go, it's just not going anywhere. Maybe it is time to pivot. So
Call on mentors and friends and colleagues who can
yeah,
see
absolutely.
outside of it too. Sometimes people outside of your situation can see it much more clear than you can and will be able to guide you and say, don't be afraid to ask people. Say, I've been doing this. I don't know, should I or that's you've always used mentors, used Young Presidents Organization, the colleagues that he has in there have been really good at
Right. I'm
guiding
in a
you.
group called YPO. It's Young Presidents Organization, and the great thing about that group, there's also EO, Entrepreneurs Association, and that's for people that um, maybe their business isn't that big, and YPO is for the larger businesses. And what's great about both of them is there's sounding boards because you're in with other entrepreneurs, and you can talk to people and tell them where you are, and they can get great advice. Um, they say it's lonely at the top. When you're at the top of your organization, a lot of times people won't tell you the truth. They're all yes people, and you need people to tell you no, and you need people to challenge you. And so what YPO has done is we're all peers, we're all equal. So they call you out. They don't they don't say yes, and it's a great place to hear the truth, and we need the truth if we want to grow. Um, some people like to surround themselves with people that tell them what they want to hear. Yeah, personally, I think that's a bad recipe. It doesn't help you really grow if you don't hear, the reality of what's going on. So,
Chris, you got a question? You want to stand up a little bit? Maybe. So he's got money, someone who has money to invest doesn't know where to start. Where do they? How do they even begin?
So I've had so many friends that have invested. They've get a little nest egg, and they invest in other people's business starting up. And they invest in other things, and I've always told them I thought that was a bad idea because um, I think if you invest in yourself and your own idea, yes, but if you invest in bonds and stocks, great. But when you invest in other people's dream, I don't mind if it's sweat equity, right? But if it's all you got, you should have control of your own destiny. I like to try to do that because I've watched a lot of people that go off and start a business, and if you don't put some of your own skin in the game, then it's easier to quit, right? If it's not you, I mean, if it's you help somebody else out, so I don't mind standing alongside of somebody and working with them and seeing how hard they work, and then hopefully the business succeeds. But if you have your own money, you know, again, I've told countless people, I mean, go either the traditional route so you don't lose it, or invest in your own self in something that you really believe in, and hopefully you can, but when I say that, I've also seen some people that lose all their own money because then they don't even know what they're doing with business, and so
I
um,
think you probably what I've witnessed watching him is that I mean you've invested in a lot of things over the years, and you really look for people, not the idea. Like, are the people the kind of people you want to invest in? Because ideas, everyone's got an idea, but sometimes ideas are created without a need, and then it just falls flat on your face. But the people you've been most excited about are those that you saw that were willing to get in, get gritty, and get dirty, and be responsible, and that's something you've always promoted.
internet
Ketchup?
thing.
What?
Remember the guy that had the coolest cooler? What's
Yeah,
the
the
name of that?
coolest cool Kickstarter.
Kickstarter. So you heard of Kickstarter? So in Kickstarter, it's about great ideas and people need money. And I've told my wife, I said I would never invest in Kickstarter, and the reason is a great
You don't know them.
the largest, most successful Kickstarter campaign was a friend that we knew who made the coolest cooler. Okay, and this was a cooler that had, you know,
A blender, a USB card, a
everything you
cutter,
could ever
a
need
kitchen,
when you
basically.
when you go
And
to the tailgate. It's got it all in the cooler. Great idea, but the guy is an idea guy. He's not a business guy. He's not a production guy. He's not, if you invest in something, you have to know the whole chain of the business is going to work. An idea is only 1/10 of the success of a business. You have to then be able to implement, be able to grow, and be able to do the things. And in his case, he won it $80,000. He got $13 million. He became the cover of all those magazines. He ended up getting 60,000 orders, all at a price that was a break-even price. It didn't work, and he ended up failing. And so, I think you have to really understand the business and see that there are so many aspects of a business for it to succeed. It's not just the idea, and then again, it's not just the execution. Sometimes you have execution and then you have a bad idea. Sometimes you have a great idea and you have bad execution. So you have to be able to understand the whole process before I'd put my money into anything. So
talk to bankers and people that are in it, and mentors and other business people. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have come to us with ideas. Oh my gosh, and they're so passionate, and they just need $1 million. I have this idea. I know it's going to make millions, and they just everyone is passionate when they have a dream. I mean, that starts it.
So I say what I said, but there's some young man from Chapman University back home, and he had an idea. He says, "Why it takes $100 million in 10 years to get a drug through the FDA just for animals? It takes a lot more than that for a human drug." And he says, "Well, why don't I go to the human pharmaceuticals and grab their data
For animals.
for animals?" they've already done all the studies for dogs and cats. So if I grab it, I can save 8 years. I can save $90 million. And he had a great idea. And then I saw how he worked. And the guy, he just
He
worked his
worked like
tail
you.
off. And yeah, and his connections. And he gathered people, the head of Allergan, who created Botox and other things. He's 85 years old. He had him mentoring him and all these other people. So, I'm now the largest investor in the company. I own half the company. And it was great because the other month, one of the young men working there says, he had a statement. He says, you've had a long day at work when you hit morning traffic coming and going to work. I mean, these kids work round the clock, they sleep there. So I invest in that passion because it's not just the idea, it was their execution and follow through and all the drive. They're going to make mistakes, but they are listening to, the old guy who created Allergan. They're listening to, even myself and other people. And so I'm enjoying that, but it's different than just an idea and then, not having the support. But when you surround yourself with people that will believe in your dream, and then mentor you, you've got a great chance, I think.
With what? Failed what? How much did you fail
Fail.
trying to build up a business?
Well, I would
A lot.
actually, I mean, I've always looked at it and say I don't think I've ever failed. I mean, I have learned a lot, right? I mean, things have not gone well a lot. Um, but
You
then
always
you're,
say no is just the beginning of. I like that
yeah,
phrase.
I mean, right. I mean, I always said that no is the beginning of a conversation, right? Not the end. And I've had a lot of times when, you know, things have gone terribly wrong. And then you just learn I'll never do that again. Or, you learn how to
Pivot.
avoid that. And so, um, but I haven't failed. I mean, I've shut down companies that didn't go well. I just learned and moved it on into other businesses that I was doing. But it depends on what you want to define it. Again, failure, I don't like that word. It kind of feels like the end. I mean, and if we're still adapting and growing, then we're
I think
learning.
you adopt the principle from, I don't know if you remember T. Boone Pickens, a very successful man in the oil and Texas business. And Glenn had the opportunity to sit down with him because that man made billions, lost billions, made billions, lost
Yeah,
billions. And you asked him,
I was having dinner with I said, Boone, I said, man, you were a billionaire, and then you went broke and lost it all. Then you were a billionaire, and you went broke and lost it all. I said, now you're a billionaire. I said, why are you doing it again? And he says, son, I just like being in the game. And that was it. It was a game. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't, and it was and it made me really look at, you know, what do you do? I mean, it keeps score. You get a good life. But if you can see it and not be in fear of money as you're all. And so it kind of changed my mindset too, where you know the money isn't the end all be all. You're trying to grow and learn, and yeah, you're gonna have setbacks. And I don't think he ever thought he failed either. I think he he had a pretty crazy wild ride in his life. He just passed away a few months ago, but yeah, interesting.
anything else? Yes? How do you determine the life of the business? So if a business has like a 10-year life mark, how do you get past that? Or do you just keep
Yeah,
going? Or how
I
do you
mean,
know?
maybe I've never been smart enough to look at those things because I got into a business because I cared about it. I didn't know if it'd go a year or 20 years. I didn't ever have in my mortgage business, which is my primary business, and then I had a lot of ancillary businesses around that, appraisal, audit, credit, lots of other businesses. I never thought about does it last 20 years. I just knew I wanted to keep growing it and getting it bigger and doing those kind of things. Um,
That DVD business didn't work out so well.
yeah, I had a few businesses that weren't so good, but like I said, it's a long running joke. Okay, you don't want to know it's painful, but so So I think that, now I'm a little older and maybe I would have the wisdom of a business school or something to say, you make your plan and understand where you are in that plan and go forward. And I'm doing more of that with the businesses I have now. It's like, you need numbers. I mean, you really, that saying, what you can measure, you can manage, right? And, I would just, before when I was younger, it was just about growing it and knew I needed to make money. I was always refining so I could be as, as just efficient as I could be, and then what dropped out of the bottom. But I didn't manage it well enough back in the day. This is 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And now, I mean, I have so many, dashboards that show you, you know, your daily numbers, your weekly, monthly numbers. And with the restaurant, as an example, we just hired an accounting person that we say we want to get the numbers every day, and we want to know cost of goods, we want to know cost for employee cost. All those things are so important to really manage or measure so you can manage them, right? So it is important because you need those tools. Um, Again, starting out, not having a big background in that, I just knew I needed to be efficient and I wanted to make sure it made money, because if it made money, I could keep going. I could keep paying my people. And as I
Speaking of
evolved, I got better at that.
speaking of money, and I know that all these guys can attest to how tight you are. Like one of the tightest people I've ever met, but very respectful of money in the sense that we will walk down the street and he will pick up a penny because you treat money with respect. And his motto is every penny counts. And that has been a motto for his success where, if you start bleeding on little things here and there, you're never going to amass. You're never going to and he's always negotiating. He is a master, right? Am I right, guys? Yeah, big nods, right, Chris? Yeah.
If you don't ask, you don't get. But I, I think that we all know ourselves, and so I hold myself to my own standard, right? And as an example, if I know something, I know it, and I can't get it out of my head. Like if I see a piece of paper and I say that's a litter, sometimes I walk right by it. But my point is, if I see it and I say it, and I drop something, let's say, right? Then I go, that was lit. And then I might still walk, and then I go, you know what? I know it, and I have to turn around and walk all the way back just to pick it up and no one knows that, but I know, if that makes sense, right? And when I go down the road, there's like, I could cut that corner in order to get over across the street, and I always go to the end and go over, and it's only for me. Again, you guys start watching me now, but I mean, it's um, it says in my head, I don't want to cut corners, like literally, it's just a lesson for myself. Again, it's stupid. It doesn't mean anything. I want to keep in my own mind, don't cut corners, don't cut corners. And then I do that it's, I don't even know why I'm telling you this, but my point is, I believe that you know yourself, and if you're strong in your beliefs, then and you say, it's important to be efficient, then you got to do that all the time. You can't just look at it one way and say, well, it's okay today, and then allow money to bleed out the other side. I just am an efficient or frugal or tight wad, as whatever. But that's the only way I've seemed to have been able to hold on to it. Yeah. So right. No, I've had that happen a million times. I mean, where I scrape the ground, and then you come back up. And so it feels like you're doing everything that I would do too, which is you're asking the question right now. And there's going to be something, whether it's an SBA loan, whether it's some kind of something comes along. I don't know. It always came out of left field for me, right? And I'm telling you, I can't. In 2007, the world blew up, right? I mean, talk about scraping the ground in the financial crisis. I had $100 million of buyback loans, class action lawsuits. I had 85% of my business went away. I mean, it's just on and on and on and on. And there was no way out. I couldn't figure out a way to get out of it. And then all my competition folded and went away. And I went and I opened 5 offices. November '07, I opened 5 more in '08. And everyone said, why in the world would you do this? Take the last bit of your money and just do this now in the middle of the worst crisis in the last 100 years or whatever it's been. And I just knew that I said, if you don't believe in these people, I believe these people are the right people. And I just have a gut feeling. And I went for it. And I took a clipboard, literally. I went to Merrill Lynch and Bank of America, Bear Stearns, all those guys who said I owed them 20, 30 million of buyback of loans that went bad. And went to New York, went to San Francisco, and I just sat down with every single person. And I just said, so you say I owe you 20 million of loans. I said, I don't think I owe it to you because they were these reasons, right? It was stated income loan. How do I know that they didn't make them, all this stuff. And we'd negotiate. I'd say, look, I can give you 5 cents on the dollar. That's it. And I just said, you're either going to be on my side of I'll work with you, or you're going to be on the side of basically pound sand. And I said, all I'm going to do is add up all the clicks of pound sand. And if I have too many, I know what I need to do, file bankruptcy. And you're done. And if I don't, and you work with me, I'm going to fight like hell to stay alive. And that was September '07 when I went with the clipboard to every single person. I got 100,000 square feet. I need 8,000. You can tell me I owe you, or you can give me the 8,000. I went to the Department of Corporations, who wanted me to go back and audit for 5 years every loan and pay prepaid interest. Long stories. Every single person said they'll work with me because you get in their face, you sit down, and what I find a lot of people in hard times, like what you're talking about, is you're going, man, this is too hard to deal with. You put your head in the sand, and if you close your eyes, it'll go away. It won't go away. Get in their face, tell people this is what you need, ask. Every single person worked with me, and I went through, and for all those loans that, again, I still didn't feel were my issue, I did global settlements. Never come back to me again. And then when the world got better, most of the people out there didn't do global settlements. And then they said, oh, you got money. And then they went after him and sued him again. They couldn't come back and sue me. I got through that and ended up being the second largest lender in the country because of that. But it was dark days, because I had my name on all these buildings. Like, the bigger you are, the harder you can fall, and the world watches you, and they can sit and say, look at that guy. Some people seem to pleasure in the fact that you fall to your knees when you're a bigger guy. And I just said, I'm not gonna hide. I'm just gonna go and grind through it. So you'll figure it out. I know you will, because you're asking the right questions. You know. I get it. Yeah, I get it. Good luck. The what back? Oh yeah, that's a funny story. One sec, bear with me. Here's a good side story. So I went that in '07, exactly at that time. I told my landlord I need 8,000 feet. We had a few floors, and they said, Glenn, you can stay in your 8,000, but get everything out of the rest of the building. So they were. So I said, okay. I told my friends, who wants to buy my cubes? I bought them for 200,000. You can have the cubicles for 80 grand. And I thought people would buy them, and no one did. So I went to 60 grand. There were so many cubicles. By the time I got them, I had to pay someone 5,000 to take my cubicles away, right? And so I negotiated with him. I got to zero. So just I said, take them out. And so they lowered all the cubes. They were almost finished when my assistant came to me and said, Glenn, these two businesses just went out. They just went under, my competitors. And that's when I knew I was going to go after their people. And I went to the cube guy because he was standing there. I go, hold those cubes right there. I might need them. And he's like, what? And I go, just get them out of here. I'm joking. Just get them. So he got the cubes out of there. The next day, I met with the people that failed their business. I said, let me take on your business. I had to go back to the guy I gave the cubicles to and buy them back for 60. He gave me a deal, $60,000 to buy my own cubes back. So, hey, but I got my cubes back. But and I opened. The landlord came back and goes, why are all these people back in here? You said you were going to be out. And I said, changed my mind. I said, either charge me because I'll pay, or if you want, kick me out, and I guess I got to go across the street. But do you want revenue or you're not? And I stayed. I'm still in that building. That was '07, so however long that's been.
Yeah, I think so. You have been so gracious with your time. We are out, we are way beyond what we were hoping that you could spend with us. Not sorry at all. We're so appreciative of it. It's always nice to see both of you. I didn't get to see you as much, but it's been great as you continue to be in Erie and support us. We're so grateful. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here today. I know you have some other fun things you're doing as your time is very limited. Going with RJ. Yeah. Oh,
So
Iron Empire.
coming up this weekend. That's this weekend, right? The grand opening. And there's, you can see what's available on the website. There is. That's just what's available. You go to the website if you want any underdog stuff. That's there. So.
And I see that it's being sold like everywhere, even that people have never even come to Underdog. They haven't even tasted it, but they love the merchandise. So that is very awesome. Thank you.